Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hao Huang, Associate Professor of Social Sciences, and welcome to the Illinois Tech Social Science. On today's seminar, you can submit a question during the webinar by typing in the chat box. We will open the floor to questions at the end. Today's speaker, Dr. in the Department of Geography at the University of Washington. He earned his PhD degree in geography from Ohio State University and his master degree in cartography and GI science and his bachelor degree in GI science from Nanjing University. His research efforts lie at the intersection between GI science and human geography to develop a unique research agenda around the social implications of newly emerging GIS technologies, especially for the interest of vulnerable populations, such as refugees displaced by climate change impacts and LGBTQ plus communities. In repressive national contexts, all Black communities who have been disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Zhao studies how spatial data streams from social media are used in high-profile social and political struggles, looking for instance at locations proven by activists like indigenous groups involved in territory struggles, or by reactionary groups agitating over fake news. His publication on deepfake geography urges GI scientists to develop coping strategies to the ambivalent Recently, he has been working on a research agenda around humanistic GIS, which encourages people to redefine GIS by incorporating personal experience in the use and the development of GIS applications. He has published scholarly articles on these research areas in top journals, such as Dialogues in Human Geography, Annals of the American Association of Geographers, and Cartography and Geographic Information Science. His research has been funded by the National Science Foundation, National Institutes of Health, Rajawadi Fellowship, National Geographic, Turf Grass Water Conservation Alliance, Clean Water Services, Learning Innovation Grant, Google Education Grant, Samsung Corporation, in the American Apple Club Research Grant. It's a pleasure to welcome Dr. Zhao.
Thank you so much, Dr. Huang, for your introduction, as well as to introduce me to this opportunity to share some of my latest work to a broader audience. I have been hear about good things about this seminar, so I'm so privileged to get the chance to present some of my work to this audience. As Dr. Huang just mentioned, my presentation will be about some of my recent work around a proposal I recently brought about, named as Humanistic GIS. As you can see, this proposed agenda is trying to consider the humanistic influence and the impact on GIS and how we can use humanistic thinking patterns to better understand and rewire GIS. So without further ado, I will start my presentation. So if the presentation is primarily based upon a recent publication in the same title of this presentation, published on the Annals of AAG. So if you're interested in that, you can search this article. So today, you probably found an increasing number of technology related to geospatial data that are playing a growing role in our daily lives. For example, think about the use of Apple Watch, that they can show you your route to different destinations you planned. And also there are increasing number of delivery bots in different campus where they help people to deliver foods or other goods to their location. And also Pokemon Go, which is augmented reality game that based upon the Google data to build on the game frame to helping people to catch those Pokemons, but also somehow exercise themselves. Tesla is another example that real-timely building virtual environment and helping people to navigate on the road and also be safe in the road. There are also like smart homes, Internet of Things. Those technology are increasingly serving or integrated with our everyday life, but also most of functions are somehow built upon geospatial data and geospatial technologies. Because of the increasing number of geospatial data, but which are not always being studied by the GIS scientists, I think there is a need to consider those increasing number of technologies that are relevant to the geospatial data to the category of GIS, enable GIS scientists to study them. Secondly, when we talk about the humanism, there are some sister and brother disciplines already spend a lot of efforts to examine how a humanistic term is. For example, in computer science, especially the recent emerging artificial intelligence that Fei Li and a few other leading scholars are trying to promote in a so-called humanistic term in computer science. Like a few keywords has been frequently used in their domain, like humanistic AI, human in the loop, and the human-centered AI. In Stanford, there is a center named after human-centered artificial intelligence. And mostly for computer scientists, the humanist term is trying to use AI or other computer technology for social goods. So to learn from computer science, I guess GIS can also somehow to promoting a humanistic term that help us to better understanding the way we as human to interact with different technology in a situated environment, but also try to promote for social goods. So consider this two background that the humanistic turn happening in neighboring, in the sister and the brother discipline, as well as that we at GIS Centers has a need to consider more and more geospatial data relevant technology, which are not being excluded in a domain. I think it is necessary to think about what is a humanistic GIS and also how a humanistic GIS research agenda can help us to better understanding this urgent needs. So after sharing with you the background, I would like to develop my presentation into the following sections. I'll first talk about GIS mitigated human experience, because I believe this is the epistemological entry point to understand what is GIS. And then based upon that, I brought up a new taxonomy of GIS and also talk about implication of GIS and what are the messages Human GIS agenda will bring to us. In the end, we'll talk about the future research and give a summary of today's presentation. So GIS mediated experience, as I mentioned, is the epistemological entry point to understand what is a GIS. So the GIS cannot be isolated by human and the place. Basically, the experience help us to establish this structure between those three elements. Think about that. A person try to navigate using Google Map, but recently they provide a AR augmented reality function that, as you can see through this diagram, this pedestrian who are navigate through augmented reality map on the phone that helping him to the destination. As you can see, the augmented reality they are integrated with geospatial data, right? The experience of this pedestrian is of the place, of the environment is mitigated through GIS. So that's an example of the three elements which it's built up this human experience, a human GIS mitigated experience. So some of you might question whether my definition of GIS is too broad, because when I'm talking about GIS, it is a technology that mitigated GIS here is a technology that mitigates the human experience of the place. Right? Think about this definition. Some of you might wonder, for example, like I say, Apple Watch. When Apple Watch is used for navigation purpose, yes, seems a GIS because there are geospatial data integrated. There are like maps shown on the watch, but a smartwatch is a GIS when it's used for navigation, but it's not always the GIS, right? When it function as a watch, it is watch, right? How it can become a GIS all the time. I think my definition here is trying to emphasize the momentary experience, right? So the Apple Watch can be considered as a GIS when geospatial data was used or integrated human experience toward a place. However, when the geospatial data is not mitigated or not used, it's not a GIS. So what I'm trying to emphasize here is that when we consider GIS, we need to consider the momentary experience. In the meantime, we need to think about technology in its momentary phase, rather than like technology is GIS, they will be always GIS. A technology is not GIS, it will not always GIS. So GIS, in my perspective, it depends on the momentary experience. Okay, so go back to the human experience. I think we all know that it's actually proceeded from various senses, and also is both bodily relevant and socially constructed. There are some common cognitive characteristics like finger ground, self-reference, and more. For example, like this finger by Escher. If our eyes focus on the white birds, the blackbirds will be in our background of perception. But if we focus on our eyes on the blackbirds, the whitebirds will be in the background. So this is a kind of concept of finger ground, but only from the visual sense. But I mean, this perceptions actually embedded in human experience, but can be perceived from various senses of human being. So the human experience is always about something else. So the aboundance direct one's experience to a targeted place. So if we talk about place, they have a few characteristics like the scalability, dynamics, the space is always relevant to the space. And also there will be like physical place, virtual place, hybrid place. And also in my recent article, I also talk about crypto place. If you're interested, you can search this article where I'm talking about monument, which was built to memorize the whistleblower in Chinese with COVID-19 pandemic. So after we introducing the JS mitigated human experience, I want to base that to propose the taxonomy of JS. So the taxonomy of JS is helping us to better understanding the function and how it interact with human and the place. So when JS is approaching human, it becomes a part of human being. At that moment, JS is an embodiment of JS. When JS become approaching to the place or integrated the place, then it becomes what? Becomes a digital environment or smart city. At that moment, JS is a background JS. And then JS can also be moving between human and place. There will be hermeneutic and autonomous JS, which I will introduce later. So embodiment JS, basically, as I mentioned, JS is embodied with a human being, united with the user, and verbal devices is a great example, which I just shared with you, the augmented reality, right? People, the pedestrian using for navigation purpose. The hermeneutic JS, basically JS becomes a representation of a place. Human interact with a place only through JS. That's the reason why there's an igma between human and place, because all of the information about the place is captured by human is through the JS, right? The traditional map, atlas, online map, virtual globe, they can also be seen as belong to this specific category. Autonomous JS, which is more interesting, JS serve as an independent agent and also as a place. JS become a plaza other. It interact with human being. Think about the experience of using a drone, right? When you're approaching the drone, Joe will be like will be immediately go back, leaving some space between you and the drone itself, right? So this interaction make this drone looks like a human being, right? Similar as the laser supported vacuum bots, right? They also can collecting geospatial data, build the model of the interior of the home, but also they're interacting with you. At that moment, this kind of GIS is become a place, but also an independent agent. The last one is background GIS. As I mentioned earlier, for this kind of GIS, a GIS is not immediately apparent from the focus of human experience, but they interact with you all the time, and they share with you the data generated through your interaction actually influence your activity within that specific place. So quickly recap my the proposed taxonomy of GIS. As you can see from the formula, that GIS is actually moving between human and the place. Its position, right, determines the type of GIS. And also I list a few examples. For example, like autonomous GIS. It could be drones, self-driving cars, GIS satellites, GeoAI, data crawler. For background GIS, it could be smart city, cloud GIS, cyber GIS, spatial cyber infrastructure, Internet of Things, CCTV, and so on and so forth. One thing I want to highlight here is that how the specific type of GIS can amplify human experience and social implications. As I briefly brought up, for embodiment GIS, they can embody augmented experiences. For hermeneutic JS, it can interpret and generalize the complicated context of place. For autonomous JS, it can emancipating human being from repetitive duties. And the background JS can enrich the interaction between being and place, reducing the unnecessary human intervention in the decision-making process. If you recall, when I talk about human experience, I brought up a common cognitive characteristic, which named as finger ground. So if we think about this structure, the finger is usually very easily observed, but the background, right, we sometimes will be forgot or ignored. So in this case, for those type of JS, what are the social implications that can be easily ignored? Then, as I mentioned, the amplifications is easy to perceive, right? Like what I listed over here. But what are the things are easily forgot? So here I was introducing those easily neglected reductions, reducted social implications. So I'll first talk about the embodiment of JS, argumented autonomous JS, background JS. At the very end, I'll talk about hermeneutic JS because that's the focus of my recent research. So for embodiment of JS, motion sickness is always a problem. If you recall, I don't know whether you have the experience of using Mantis VR. Well, you can using that to enter a new space, but sometimes you feel really dizzy and uncomfortable, like using for 15 minutes. And from research, we found out that female wearers are actually had a greater risk of being affected by motion sickness when playing these VR games or entering the metaverse. So that actually brings a more important question. Is metaverse or equivalent virtual space, which entered by VR or even Google's or Apple's new glass, they consider those gender bias, how they can confront or dealing with this gender bias. The second one is autonomous JS. As we know, if we think about roles, right, it can build up a 3D model much faster than traditional 3D modelers. That actually encourages us think about the possible job displacement, which is already happening. Like the estimation from McKinsey that a lot of workers worldwide are forced to change their job because of the influence of automation and including the bots, robot industry, and also the generative AI. Another more theoretical thing, influence I would like to describe as a shifting hegemony of geographical knowledge. Basically, as you can think about that, the GeoAI system were primarily deployed in countries from global north due to the expensive cost. But in the meantime, the geospatial data annotation tests were often outsourced to workers from the global south due to their low payments and the training cost. So in that sense, the labor is actually transition from the global north country to global south, but the geographical knowledge are training this model are captured from global south in turn, influence the decision made by the GeoAI system, which deployed in global north. The last one, the next one is a background JS. One thing we always talk about is digital panopticon because they monitoring us all the time, especially like this picture on the left is all the monitors in a single at a single spot in Beijing. And because of the integration of the AI system, which having all the data of national, has all the data database of national identification, they can easily identify who you are within a few seconds. right? And another dimension which we talk about in our recent paper named as digital geographies of the bug, we're thinking about how bugs in the algorithm space are kind of distributed from to the territory and the whole opera space. So if you're interested, I encourage you to search this literature. And in the end, I want to talk about the hermeneutic GIS, which, as I mentioned, is the research focus of my past several years. Because hermeneutic GIS create a enigma between human and place, and geospatial data, when it visualize or plays as a mediator, it always can bring fake geographical information if the user doesn't have enough knowledge about things on the ground. I mean, about the place which the map are visualized. So one of the famous book which was written by Mark Mormuir, who wrote a book called How to Lie with Map, which are trying to indicate this case. For me, my research has been covering a lot of other topics like location spoofing, fake geography, especially deepfake geography. So I think some of my early study relevant to how I can collectively, how I can develop algorithm to find out those fake locations or location spoofings on social media. For example, what was developed is so-called a Bayesian time geographic approach, considering different human biophysical limits, as well as other constraints of human movements, and using these constraints to helping us to identify whether location is fake or not. And another dimension of my recent work is relevant to the deepfake geography, which has attracted an increasing media attention. For example, the three main geography associations in North America all reported my research on this. And also the Geospatial Intelligence Agency consider deepfake geography as a pressing national security concern. One of my research is trying to evaluating how deepfake or generative AI can generate a fake satellite image. For example, there's 8 satellite imagery tiles does not actually exist on the ground. They are all fake. But when you look at them, they're so realistic. But somehow you can still find some of the problems. For example, like those rows look like too curly, right? In some of the places. But again, sometimes it's really hard for human to identify deepfake satellite imagery is fake or not, only with human eyes. That's the reason why we proposed SVM method to identify a satellite image is deepfake or not. However, purely based upon technical approach is limited, I would say. It's important for the academia as well as government and the public to develop or to understanding the politics of truth. That's the reason why in another paper I was co-authored, we're trying to envision epistemological shift in understanding geospatial data in the so-called post-truth era. So if you're interested, I encourage you to Google this article. So the next section I would like to talk about is a message from humanistic GIS. I will mainly emphasize on some of the ethical and social issues, impacts the humanistic GIS can helping us to envision and think even critically and deeper. I think humanistic GIS trying to encourage us to think about the humanistic care, how GIS as a mediator can carry human when they are in experience place. So generally, this idea is coming from Foucault's book on the care of the self. And in the GIS mitigated experience, I think, if we think about humanistic care, human beings are encouraged to engage in the mitigation of preparation carefully and critically. And then in the engagement, they actively shape human actively shape their GIS mitigated existence. So here I would like to share with you a few case studies, maybe focus on one of the paper I published as a way to illustrating how humanistic care is important in the design and development of GIS. I think most of you know during the COVID that a lot of those big tech companies they're trying to promote a campaign called the Black Wound Restaurant or Business Labeling Campaign. What is it? Basically, if this restaurant or business is black wound, then in their information profile, they will show, okay, this is black wound restaurant. Why they're doing this? I think especially after the murder of George Floyd, a lot of the big tech companies thinking about how they can do their best to supporting the Black communities. This is actually one of the solutions they propose. So my question on this research is trying to examine the efficiency or the effects of this Black wound labeling campaign. Did that really help the Black community, or there any way to improve? As GIS scientists, we also need to carefully think about, I think that's most important, I think why I wrote this paper, is the care from the big tech company or the GIS scientist, because that's the person who developed this location-based service, right? Is the care from the GIS scientist is really care those targeting group here is the Black community, or should we think more critically about those kind of humanistic care? No doubt, for the big tech companies, it is a care because they try to adding this label to the Black woman restaurants and using this as approach to increase the visitations or increasing the visitations to the Black woman restaurant and then thereby increasing revenues, right? However, based on our research using mobile phone data, we analyzed the major cities in the United States. What we found out is that it's this chart in 2020. Basically, the red line indicating the visitation trend of Black woman restaurants, the blue line and the range indicating the ownership not reported the restaurants. As you can see, at the initial phase of Black wound labeling campaign, yes, there is an increase of the Black wound restaurants visitations compared with the restaurant ownership not released companies. However, if we look at the long term, the visitations to the Black wound is actually dropping much faster than the other restaurants their ownership is not released. So that actually encourages us to think about, yes, as big tech companies or GIS scientists, we're trying to help in Black wound restaurants. It seems to only help them at a very short time range. But if we look at the long run, it doesn't sustainably supporting Black wound restaurants. And things are even worse because Black wound restaurants release their identity, release their ownership, right? A lot of those racist comments, especially some other fake, they flood into Black wound restaurants. As you can tell, if you order food, if there are a lot of bad comments or the rate is low, will you still order food from the restaurants? I think the answer is no. So based on the research, I think I encourage people to think about, is the care from the big tech company or GIS scientists is really care others. So I think it's really important to care, but I think for giving care, it's really important to think the care itself very carefully and critically. Sometimes if you only care for your own perspective, that may generate even more burdens to the group you're trying to care about. So the next example provided I will just briefly introduce is an NSF supported project called Shifting LGBTQ Speciality. And in this work, we're trying to visualize a travel book called Demon's Guide, which collecting LGBTQ values over the past 60 years. And we are making the system to visualizing the values. There are a lot of voice saying, okay, is that appropriate to visualize those very sensitive, somehow secret space of LGBTQ people? I think there are these concerns, but we also think there will be risk if we don't correct, because through our project, we're able to correct the travel book, because in the book, there are some errors or typos. And if we don't do that, we're actually presenting an incorrect history of LGBT community, right? So I think when we're doing our research, we're definitely aware of those tensions between those two different arguments, but we think the necessity of the work is trying to lower the risk of visualizing or providing or keep thinking the LGBTQ history in the incorrect with incorrect data. Another case study we have been working on is called archiving the Trop. Basically, in this research, we visualize the Capitol Hill occupied protest through satellite imagery. No, sorry, a drone imagery was captured during the protest. As you can tell, after the protest, everything on the ground has been washed out, like the camps, like the graffitis. I know still there are very extreme and conflict tensions and arguments towards this protest. But from a researcher's perspective, I think, especially at Seattle, I think it is very necessary to preserve, somehow digitally preserve this important moment of Seattle. If we don't do that, this memory of Seattle will be totally forgot by our offsprings or other people. And for example, this is, we're zooming down to the drone image. You can clearly find out those graffitis, right? And sharing what they're talking about. And also we can see those camps, what were being set up during the protest. Okay, at the very end, I want to close in my presentation with some future thoughts. So for my humanist GIS framework, I mainly focused on the human experience. Some of my peers were arguing or asking me about how we can consider other inhuman, non-human, and even other than humans, if they do exist. So to consider them, I think it's necessary to expand this framework. In my recent article submitted to the Dialogues in Human Geography, I'm trying to think about an approach to expand this framework, not only confined by human, but also consider animals and artificial intelligent behavior. So if you're interested, I encourage you read this paper named as Reorienting GIS Science for a Data Intensive Society. Also, I think as a goal to promoting human experience to integrate it with GIS development use, I'm trying to make this agenda embracing constructive ideas and welcome any kind of critique to strengthen its capability to understanding GIS in the constant mitigation with humanity and the world. So I know it's somehow is a seminal idea, but I think putting this out, they can serve as a vehicle to collecting more valuable ideas and the critiques to make we GI scientists or other technicians or scholars to better thinking or integrate human experience in the development and use of GIS science or GIS technology. Okay, at the very end, I want to thank my co-authors and students who helped me or inspire me to think about those research agenda. Also today, thank you for your attention and for attending this seminar. Thank you. I guess that's all. And if there are
I think Dr. Zhao gave a very interesting talk about the humanistic JS, which is wonderful. So now we open the questions. So anyone want to? I saw some raise your hand. Some. Oh. Oops. Okay, so my question actually is very interesting to see you give the examples. So and like the Black-owned restaurant used the ways is label is a Black-owned for try to help or give the positive impacts. I'm wondering if actually have like the counter impacts instead of since you labeled Black-owned, so it's possible actually some people if they have they have a bad experience before, so they may actually avoid instead of actually encourage people to go there. How you see actually this label ways actually to affect you in both the positive or negative way.
Yeah, I think definitely there are positive ways. As I mentioned here, we found out, yes, it does help to increase visitation to Black-owned in a statistical approach, in a statistical analysis. But we're thinking about the long terms. In the long term, it doesn't effective and even make the Black-owned restaurant visitation drop faster than other restaurants. So that's, I think, is really disappointing, I guess, or even worsely affects those Black communities. Yeah, I guess this is, I'm thinking about both positive and the negative influences. The mobile phone itself, if I understand your question correctly, the mobile phones definitely is just one approach to get a visitation, because the data can show whether a mobile phone user has entered a restaurant or in the location of whether they're in the location of restaurant or not. But again, this is just a sample of users. There are a lot of users you don't need to mention, like they don't carry a smartphone, or they just pick up food like a delivery man, right? So it's not 100% to represent the people who consume in that specific store. And also, again, this is just a sample. It's not covering the whole population. So it still definitely have like a bias or limitations. I think down the road, I think we need to think more carefully or a more holistic approach to assess those influences.
I see. So the other example you used is LGBTQ plus communities.
Yeah.
So for this one, actually you explained it's the lack of historical memory, because of this the characteristics of the group or the nature of the group. And so then how did you see this lack of historical memory related to the place attachment? So in terms of the taxonomy of jazz, you mentioned the four type of jazz. So how do you think which type of jazz could help to these issues of lack of history memory to improve or to have more place attachment in the sense of place?
That's a really great question, which I haven't think about that. But the lack of narratives or memory about LGBTQ people in a specific place, that's one of the reasons is a lot of community members of the LGBT people, they feel very cautious about releasing their data, or not themselves, but the venue data where they will visit, right? Like restaurant, like cafe or pub. They're very worried about visualizing them, because you can think about that. If those venues are visualized, I think today, the environment in some of the states are more open, but there are still in some of the places there people are kind of conservative, or there might have LGBTQ people who are against them, and they are worried about releasing or visualize those kind of data. But in the meantime, I think, or our team members think, if we definitely aware of those kind of worries, but we also have another level of worry if there are not enough description or narrative about LGBTQ values. The history of LGBT people will be incorrect. That's one of the major reasons why we set up this platform. So in this platform, we're gathering the LGBTQ values over the past 60 years. In the meantime, we provide a community participant function. Basically, if you are familiar with LGBTQ history in the history, you can actually log in and contribute your memory to this platform. I mean, that's the general idea we propose, and where it's still in the final wrap-up phase, but it will be released very soon in the public. But in terms of the taxonomy, I think it can be seen as a hermeneutic jazz, because it's representing, right, the place, and also using the 3D map to visualize the history of the locations of a venue over the years. But the other type of jazz can also helping to preserve visualizing LGBTQ histories. One thing I'm thinking about is the embodiment GIS. There's a famous history about the riots in New York called the Stonewall riots, and there is a VR monument was built right near the Stonewall, in the Stonewall. So I think that for that particular application, so they're using VR as a way to somehow preserve and visualize LGBTQ experience. So again, I think for this specific application, maybe it's hermeneutic, but somehow they could be integrated with VR or other kind of type of JS as well. But it really depends on the future efforts. But at least the taxonomy of JS provide us a more holistic vision about what a JS can do, and it also can be developed in the future.
I see. Yeah, that's interesting. That's very helpful and useful work. So I'm wondering, like, for this tours you developed, is it just for Seattle, or is for any in the whole world, anyone can access this?
Yes, I think it's accessible. Can you still see my screen?
Yeah, I can see the screen.
It's developed over here, but it's not public yet. But people still can visit. We have a lot of localities. As you can see now, we have a few more localities ranging from Atlanta, Nashville, Cleveland, Kansas, Phoenix, Billings, and Montana, Mobile, and Ann Arbor, St. Evans.
So it's international?
No, it's only in the United States. For example, let's switch to Boston.
Oh, okay.
So they can visualizing the LGBTQ values in Boston. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I see.
Right. And after you click one of the values, for example, this is a nightclub, and it shows you the specific descriptors, basically these features. In the meantime, they show you a bar, sometimes a multiple bar, because a place might relocate to another place. So we kind of borrow the idea of time geography to visualizing what this bar look like in different years. For example, right now it's 2014. This one is 2001, and as you can see, the descriptor they are changing because over the years they might providing or having different characteristics.
I see. And also I see you have for the legend is the venues of interest have different colors, which represent what represent that?
Oh, it represents how confident we believe its location. For example, the darker the color, the red color, meaning we are very confident about this location, where it's located. But the color is more.
I think that is the yellow one is a more constructive one.
Yeah, the yellow one meaning okay, we're less confident about where it's located.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah, I think you mentioned like.
Oh yeah, this one is pretty interesting, called dignity, right? Identity. So it's in between 2006 and 1990. It's in this location, but in 1997, it's actually here. But in other years, it's over here.
Oh, you can even go back to 1965.
Yes, it's a really long history, even to the earliest is 1967. Let's
Oh.
say. Right?
1965, you are showing here is.
Yeah, it's even earlier. Yeah, I was thinking about 7.
Oh,
But
that's
at that moment, LGBTQ bar or values it's still very few, but you can see how it grows over the years.
how do you see, like, I think just now you mentioned that you also use the space-time prism. So how do you see the space-time prism may also apply in here?
Yeah,
Since
as you
you
can see.
since you have both space and time data.
Yeah. As what I mentioned here, if you click on one of the values, they're showing a bar, right? They're kind of indicating how it was located over the years. But for this one, this bookstore, they only, I think it's first appeared in 2022, and then maybe it was founded during that time, and it was just a single bar. But for some of the values, they're actually located in different places over the years. But I need to find out one of the examples. But mostly they didn't move. Yeah. For example, this one, right? In this years they are here, but later they was moved to the new place.
Okay. I see. Currently, using is this bar to show the year.
Yeah, the
Yes.
location. Well, I mean, this is not exactly the prism, but it's somehow used in a 3D way, right? To visualize.
Yeah. Did currently already have this kind of 3D prism map or
Well, yeah, like this, right? This is a 3D, right? I don't know what is that you refer to?
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, so this is because from this zoom in map is showing like the difference for the bar height, but
Yes.
but it
Oh,
seems
okay.
that for the map it seems a little bit the same.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
I see. So then how do you see, because this is for US, how do you see this may also can apply in other context?
That's a really great question, right? Maybe I can share with you. This is another paper I wrote several years ago. Let me find it out. Yes, here. Published in PBA, and this is trying to also using social media data to
Okay.
the gay communities in Beijing, and the lowest is 0. I mean, the midnight, and the highest, meaning the other day. As you can see, that the concentrations of gay communities are in Chaoyang, Haidian, Xidan, and in Zhongguo传媒大学 CUC and Tongzhou, some place in the airport. So it's well aligned people's activities. For example, there are a few people here in the Chaoyang, Xidan area, in Chaoyang district in the early morning, right? But in other time they're so concentrated over the days. But when we're doing this research, we found out that, right, talking about LGBTQ and the relevant community is still kind of taboo in countries like this, and also in other places over the world. Some of them are more friendly, but some of them are very conservative. So it's still very experimental, I guess, for our project. But it's definitely, I think, it will have a significant impact to our country, to better understanding the history of LGBTQ. Yeah. But for other countries, I don't know. What I only aware is this diversity of accepting LGBTQ communities. Yeah.
I see. Yeah, that's very valuable work. So I think you mentioned this. I think it's very interesting. Is your have this taxonomy of JS. So and to represent or reflect the relationship between human, JS, and place. So based on your table, it seems it's a hierarchy relationship. So it seems the background relationship is represent more JS and place together with the human. So I'm wondering, like, for this is 4 levels to represent the level of the how GS can help to mediation of human experience to the place or not. It's represent that level. So which means it's represent humans place, the sense of place.
I think human experience, well, I think it's a concept kind of include the idea of a sense of place, right? Human experience, I think it's a more umbrella concept, which might including sense of place as well other perceptions or human feelings or emotions. I think for the taxonomy, what I'm trying to provide is an analytical framework to encourage people not to confine themselves, especially JS scientists, confined by themselves by the traditional way, traditional JS. What I mean is the hermeneutic JS. There are other possibilities of how JS could interact with people, like embodiment, autonomous, and background. But in the meantime, I think it is really important to not isolate JS as a single technology. It's important to consider JS as it being mitigating human experience. This human experience, basically, it embodies a structure between the 3 essential elements. So in a nutshell, I think human experience or sense of place, which is mitigated by GIS or other technology, this actually is a very important foundation to understanding what GIS is, basically the nature of GIS, but also the function of GIS. To answer the question, which I don't know whether it's fully answered, but I think traditionally when Yifu or other humanist geographers, they brought the idea of a sense of place, they mainly trying to describing the sense using so-called authentic sense. Basically, this sense is not mitigated. It's just purely through humans' interaction with a place. But what I provide is that no matter what sense it is mitigated, right, by certain technology or a thing. So this thing, if this thing is dealing with geospatial data, it is a GIS. So in a nutshell, I think when we look at a sense of place, it's important to also look at those mitigated sense of place. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So when you say mediated sense of place, so I think you mentioned several ways. So like the sight, smell, taste, all these different ways. So, but currently it's more or majority is still sights instead of smell or taste.
I totally agree. But there are some that's already, like for example, when you are driving the car, sometimes you can look at the dashboard, right? You can the Google Map can tell you, okay, turn right or something like that. So you are not with your sight, you're using your ear to interact with locational information. And also because we are all, but also we think about the visually impaired or disabled, people with a disability, right? Especially people who have vision, who are visually impaired, they're probably using their ears or the audio to understanding locational information or geographical information. So in that sense, that's very important to let us to let us be aware that the vision is not the only way to interact with geographical data, right?
Yeah, that's very. I think that's a very important point. How actually for the disabled peoples or people with disabilities, they can also use these systems, these humanistic GIS. So which means it's beyond what you're saying, visual. Yeah.
Yes, I think you brought up really important points, or that's maybe the significance of this framework. That is that they encourage people not to forget that the human experience is not just a vision, because traditionally the GIS is mainly a visual technology, but it is not, because the human experience is so diverse. There are multiple sensories. Yeah.
Yeah, but the currently GIS is more focused on.
Yeah, it's true. That's the reason why we need to expand. That's the reason why I proposed this framework to make people aware that.
Do we currently have other technologies is for other aspect of human sense?
Yes, there are. I think I didn't follow, but people are trying to look at how those auditory sense can help in better understanding geographical objects. And also, I know there are studies trying to using EEG, right, to understanding people's brain reflects to spatial objects as well. So in that sense, it's not a visual, it's more like using brain waves. It's an embodiment GIS. My understanding about smart city is a background GIS. So sometimes you are, from my argument, I'm thinking about, for example, when we interact with background GIS, we're not immediately like looking at something or hearing something. We're actually just exist in this environment, but your existence actually providing data reflections or other feedback to the smart city, and smart city can influence you. So I think that's not just vision as well. So visual sensory.
Yeah, yes, I agree. So and back to the size or the visual perspective. So I saw you have the figure is showing the relationship is human, GIS, and the place. Then it seems based on that visual range, there is a range. There's areas actually is invisible. How you see these invisible areas represented by GIS?
I'm not quite following you.
So could you show the figure for the GIS?
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate your comments. This one?
Yeah, then you're showing is a person, they stand to see the.
Oh, I know what's describing. Here.
Yes,
right?
yes. So it seems it's a range of what they see. Then also they have some with invisible for the people. So how you see these invisible parts represented by?
Oh, that's a great question. That's the reason I brought up the idea of a finger ground, like this one. So when you focus on the, let's say, the whitebirds, the blackbirds in the background, if you look at the blackbird, the whitebird in the background, similar to here, when you're using the phone, right, through the AR, your focus is on the phone and AR, but the background is in the periphery of your cognition.
I see.
So that's the reason why those from a pure experience perspective, I think it's important to understand what is falling in your vision, what is not, which usually falling to the background. And from a more obstructive perspective, I was listing like, okay, what is falling? Like the finger, you spend a lot of efforts, you easily understand, people are easily understand those effects. However, what are the background is? The backgrounds are what I mentioned here, the gender bias, the motion sickness. We didn't, just like how you use the word invisible. People are often neglect those effects in the background, but mainly focus on the amplified experience. So I think one of the major goals of humanist jazz is just encourage people understanding this intertwined implications. There are definitely amplified human experiences, but there are also reductions, and we should aware of this intertwined relationship.
I see. I see.
Yeah.
Great. That's great to hear. Okay, thank you for giving this great talk, which is very inspiration for to look at how actually we can integrate the jazz in humanistic or humanistic geography to understand human experience better and also make sense of the world. So usually we give a applause to the speaker
so
at the end. Thank you. Oh, let's see.